to my right and a little further over. And so I just would like to welcome Claudia Campos from Nueva Vida. And I'd also like to welcome Amy Wu. And I'd like to welcome Shairia Thompson from Coleman for all that they are going to share with this group in order to help the dialogue as well as to help us have more resources as we attempt to address diversity. I just want to take a few minutes just to say that, YSC has been giving a focus to diversity and inclusion. And I know that, we often hear about diversity. And diversity means a lot of different things to a lot of different organizations. And so just before we have these wonderful speakers share their experience and knowledge with us, I'd just like to say that for YSC, how we look at diversity is that it refers to a wide range of characteristics that make individuals unique. And there are many characteristics. Some of them we hear about or think about often, and then others less so. And we're not just limited to it, but I know race and ethnicity always comes up. We also think about color, we think about nationality, sometimes we think about culture, sometimes we think about gender, but religion, age, sexual orientation and identity, language, disability, appearance, your geographic location, your educational level, your profession, your socioeconomics status, your life experience, politics, and your ideologies. These is what makes diversity. But why we just don't want to talk about diversity and we want to speak about inclusion, and that's what our efforts have been and will continue to be, because it's a lot of work to get it right. And many organizations are trying to get it right and not just have it be a buzzword, is that the inclusion aspect is actually putting diversity into action by appreciating and valuing each individual for their difference and creating a sense of belonging. I had an opportunity over this weekend to chat with several people, and several women said to me, when you come to a conference, it is so important for you to be able to see a few people that you feel look like you, that you can relate to, that may understand you, so that you can feel welcome. And it is our goal to ensure that more women feel welcomed, more women feel included, and that we are able to increase our reach. Because at the end of the day, we know that young women are being diagnosed still, and it doesn't matter where you live, who you are, etc. And we want to fulfill our mission, which is ensuring that no young woman goes on this journey alone at any point on the breast cancer journey. And so I just wanted to kind of give that as a background. I'm not going to do bios on any of the ladies, because I know many of us are into technology and we've already been on the website and we could do that on our own. But what I would like each of them to share before they give us their remarks is to really state what brought them to this space in terms of focusing on diversity in breast cancer. So I'm going to start off with Claudia.
Okay.
And then being that the mic is there, and then we'll pass it on. Please note that we are recording this, and so at the end, when you do have questions, we'll ask you to potentially come up to this particular microphone and just speak loudly so that it can be picked up in the recording, so that the people who went to pet therapy can actually learn about diversity on the website. So Claudia, thank you.
Thank you. thank you everyone for being here. My name is Claudia, originally from Guatemala in Central America, and I've been working with Nueva Vida since 2008. That means that I have a long path working with breast cancer clients and other cancer clients, but the common denominator is they are Latinas. Nueva Vida was founded in 1996 by a group of breast cancer survivors, Latinas breast cancer survivors, and a group of professionals, because they know around the DMV, that is Washington, Maryland, and the capital DC, is at that point wasn't any service for Latino community, and we have a high demand for the community there. And they create Nueva Vida in order to fill the gap of culturally sensitive, bilingual social support for all Latinas in every single stage. That means that we provide services since screening, diagnostic, treatment, but most of our services is support, is psychosocial support. We are not a clinic, but we offer support groups, navigation services, outreach and education, and I share with you a little bit more later. The mission of Nueva Vida is inform, support, and empower Latinas in all stages of the cancer continuum. And why Latinas or why Hispanic community? Because at this point, the breast cancer is the leading cause of death among Hispanic women in the country. Also, we are the largest and growing minority group in the country. We represent almost 56 million here, and that means that we are huge. And in the DMV area, in the population, the total population is about 6 million, but the 14% represent Latinos there. Our principal subgroups are from El Salvador, Mexico, and Guatemala. I know that in different states we have different subgroups leading the Latino population. For example, here in California is most Mexican, right? And if we go, for example, New Jersey, New York is more from Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and depend in which area you live, the minority subgroup predominant is different. And it's very interesting that we understand that each group, they have different values, different cultures, habits, and everything. And it's important that every single service recognize that difference, because not all are Mexicans. And it's very important, for example, if we have some clients from Bolivia or from Peru, we speak with them about the reality of them. It's not everyone is the same. And that is part of our strength, because we have a deep understanding of our community, the habits, where they are located, everything about them. Also, when you say something related to diversity and minorities, I am thinking about what means cultural competences, because a lot of services, they say, oh, we provide cultural competent services, but being cultural competent is not only speak Spanish, because it's a huge difference between that. And for us, the cultural competence is the ability to understand, appreciate, and interact with persons from other cultures. And in our case, in Nueva Vida, we adapt our intervention and our approach to every single subgroup that we have in the DMV. Another strength that we have is our trust and credibility. Our clients call us for everything that they need, including other services that is not only related to cancer. Sometimes they don't know anyone else or another institution, but they call us for different things. And of course, if we don't provide the direct service, we navigate them to the other services that provide the specific support. Of course, our community have a lot of barriers that maybe in another subgroups also you will listen the same things. But for example, one of them is the lack of access to care. One of the things is they lack of local or easy to get the cancer center, for example, including starting with the mammography. Maybe they live so isolated in another small town. In that small town, they don't have easy to get the mammography, for example, or every single exam, and they have to go maybe 2 or 3 hours to another city that in the hospital provide the MRI or provide the oncologist treatment and everything. And that is one of the principal barriers. The another barriers is lack of insurance. We know that that is not easy for a lot of our community. The fragmented medical system resulting in missed appointment and avoidance of the treatment. The limited education. Most of them, they only have 3rd grade. Language barriers, also. Psychological problems like fear, trauma, post-traumatic stress, and shock, anxiety, depression. Lack of primary care. It's very interesting when we ask them, do you have a primary care? And they say, no. The last time that I went through the doctor was in my country 15 years ago or 20 years ago. And that is a reality here in a country when we thinking that they have everything, but it's not true. Our clients doesn't have most of them primary health care and no specialist for sure. And it's not easy because, for example, if you have 3rd level of education, low health education too. You don't have like a language skill proficient. If you encounter more fear, depression, and if you are in front of a fragmented medical system, what do? It's hard for some of them. And at that point is when Nueva Vida help them to overcome the barriers. We provide a comprehensive model since the screening until the end of life when it is needed. In the entire continuum, we are with them in the entire continuum. We provide navigation services and offer them translation, accompaniment, referrals to other programs, referral for financial programs to transportations, and one of the important things that Nueva Vida has by their own is the mental health support, because we provide a weekly support group for every single Latina affected by cancer, and every single Saturday we have all the morning's activities, and we start with Zumba that we danced yesterday at night. Because in our culture we like dance, and one Saturday we offer Zumba, and another Saturday we offer also yoga, because stretching and relaxing is another good options. And after that we provide the support group, and if some of them needs more near intervention, we offer individual therapy for them, for somebody who is in a crisis on an end-of-life process, and also to their caregivers. During the last 3 years, we are part of one big project with PECORI and with the University of Georgetown, and we proved one of our evidence-based programs that name is Caring to Our Caregivers, and we implement the same program in California, in San Jose, and New York will share, and in Washington with us. And we provide services with the structure workshops, and we bring the complete family to the office, and we separate in different rooms, and it's the same topic. For example, how we enhance the communication. And with one group, it's only with survivors, and we provide them the information how they enhance their needs and how express with the caregivers. And in the other room, we have the same topic, but with the caregivers. How to improve their ability of listen, or how they can help them. And also sometimes when they have kids or when they have young adolescents and everything, we provide also the same topics, but at the same at their level. Some of our accomplishment of during 2016, we provide services over 5,000 families in the area. We navigate over 1,200 Latinas through the medical health system. We provide individual therapy to 91 cancer clients. The average of our every support group is 12. And that's it. That is all that we do. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Amy, and thank you for the introduction from Desiree. A little bit about myself is that I am a writer, journalist by profession, and also a young survivor myself. A Cliff Notes version of my story is that I'm a first-generation Chinese American from New York, actually, now living in California. But in 2013, I was at the tail end of a 2-year teaching stint in Hong Kong. So I was there in April of 2013, and I was prepared to move back to the U.S. to start a PhD program in the end of August. And I found a lump in my left breast, and I was like, wow, this is new. You know, it's not been here before. And to make a long story short, basically I was diagnosed with aggressive DCIS, and it was a negative, triple negative, and I have no family history, nobody from my mother or father's side at all. And being somebody who's a relatively healthy person, I've never taken a sick day in my work life, and being a competitive swimmer, I was in shock. I mean, there were days when I was like, this is not real, this is surreal, and it's not me. So I was diagnosed in Hong Kong and treated in Hong Kong. I don't speak the local dialect, actually. I'm obviously I look Asian, I look Chinese, but I don't read Chinese. I speak enough to get by. I mean, the taxi drivers understand me and things. But I can read a menu and not get in trouble. But it was a really lonely place because, first of all, I think, I myself was in shock. I couldn't it didn't hit me yet. And then when I kind of shared it with my family, and my family was not in Hong Kong either. My immediate family was here, was in New York. My father, my stepmother, and my sister, my closest family. So in Hong Kong, I had an aunt who is a dear aunt, and my grandmother who's 95 years old. So again, no history. So when this hit, I discovered one of the biggest challenges was a cultural gap in terms of culturally the Chinese, and I think this would be the case with a lot of Asian Americans, or Asian culture, is like with anything negative, whether it be death, divorce, breakup of relationship, loss of job, the list can go on and on, disease, cancer, breast cancer. One way that I found culturally they dealt with this by not talking about it at all. Just sweeping it under the rug and pretending it doesn't exist. They don't speak the word. I don't know if it's because it's superstitious. Never asked about the details of why, but they pretty much just, my aunt went into just kind of the mode of, okay, let's schedule appointments. It became kind of very technical almost. There was no emotional, there's no hugs, no, I'm really sorry, wow, it'll be okay. So I found myself in this lonely, dark space, like I don't know what to do. And so I, being a journalist, went to Google and started to Google resources for Asians, Asian Americans with breast cancer. Then I kept adding to the list young Asian Americans, young Asians. I probably put all the search terms in there. Very little came up, but I did locally in Hong Kong because I was again treated and with radiation and surgery in Hong Kong. Found the Hong Kong Breast Cancer Foundation. They were run by Hong Kong women, but they spoke English, and they had 2 support groups. One support group who only spoke the local Cantonese dialect, and the other support group was for expatriates. But I discovered that most of them were, I went to the one with the expatriates, but most of them were like 55 or above. Nothing wrong with that. They were such nice women, but the issues that they were talking about, I could not relate to that at all. It was more like, well, you know, my grandchildren and, you know, my husband's company, their insurance, and I was sitting here like, well, I'm just trying to start my career and get back to my PhD program, and I don't know what's going to happen after that. But there was this constellation of craziness going on, and I didn't feel any kind of connection there. And then on the other hand, I also didn't speak the language. So what I found was that thankfully I came back at the end of August. I was treated, and I came back. I did start my PhD program. I've been cancer-free since then, but I've been on a mission, almost like a personal mission, to find resources for women who are Asians. And when I say Asians, this is just putting a word out there, because there's Asians, there's Asian Americans. Within Asians and then within Asian Americans, there are so many different ethnicities and diversity within that. I went to conferences like YSC or LBBC or other, I think, Komen-related events. And it's not that I specifically thought, oh, I need to seek out these women. You know, I need to find them all and start tapping people on the shoulder like, are you part Asian or whatever? But I did find that there are unique, like I said, one of the biggest barriers I thought culturally was like, we don't talk about it. We just don't go, and even at conferences today, I don't see a lot of Asian or Asian American women. And I saw a couple at the dance last night, and I found them on the dance floor. And I discovered that there is something unique about what we face, and there's an incredible amount of frustration and loneliness in not being able to tell our stories and not being able to share about our experiences like this didn't exist. You know, in fact, on the emotional level, you know, me and a couple of the ladies last night that I made friends with said that, you know, we were so starved to find that kind of oasis, you know, that we sought mental, like, psychologists, you know, and so forth. But in Asian culture, again, to even say I'm going to go see a counselor or somebody professional is seen as a sign of weakness. Or I've gotten comments from my family like, well, they're just trying to take your money, these people. They don't believe in going that route. So again, it's kind of like fighting against the current, and just being able to share is a big deal, and being acknowledged and saying this happened, I think, is a challenge. So since coming back again, I have found a few positive things. I discovered that there is a national Asian breast cancer initiative. It's out of Los Angeles. It's started by a guy, but that's okay. His mother is a breast cancer survivor. It's mainly an online grassroots effort. If you go to Facebook and you look up that organization, National Asian Breast Cancer Initiative, you'll see the Facebook page. And what they've been doing is a lot of fundraisers and a lot of, the person running it, Stephen Liu, is he himself has a lot of connections with celebrities and Hollywood types, and like Lisa Ling and so forth, so Kelly Hu. So he tries to put together once a year a big fundraiser to raise money for research and awareness. So that's what he's been doing. And I just emailed him or messaged him through Facebook and said, can I help? You know, because I just really had wanted to just somehow contribute somehow. And he said, yeah, you can help with the social media, getting the word out, maybe grassroots kind of, you know, going to community organizations and saying, hey, this exists as a resource. And they're actually just starting a year and a half ago, so they're looking for other people who are going to jump on the bandwagon, maybe even blog about it, get the word out. He's very open to starting other things. It's kind of entrepreneurial, if you ask me, but I thought, okay, it's in beginning stages, but there's a lot that can be done here. I also discovered that YSC and LBBC and Komen and other organizations in recent years have been trying to, this is wonderful, address underserved populations and start groups, committee, or I hate using the word committee, actually, it sounds so, but groups, councils, groups of women who are going to get together, advocates, and you don't have to be a professional advocate, you just have to have a passion for trying to help increase awareness. So I know that YSC recently started a diversity council, so I jumped on board, and I'm very open to helping in any way I can. This is a tremendous, there's a tremendous gap and a need that's not being fulfilled. I see it, and it's not just for Asians and Asian Americans. When I was listening to Claudio speak, I live in Salinas, which is 2 hours south. It's a primarily migrant, agricultural community filled with migrant workers, and 80% of our population is Latino Hispanic. And I don't see, like when I went to the big hospital there, the only big hospital, Salinas Valley Memorial, I said, do you have support groups or groups for women with breast cancer, young women? They said, no, but what a great idea. And I said, okay, great idea. So I was volunteered, I'm fine with that, I'm happy with that. But then I thought to myself, but you have this huge population of Latino, Hispanic women too, and there's this disparity, even just getting the care, getting the word out. Why isn't the material in Spanish, in Chinese? Why isn't it translated? And I just said, wow, there's a huge world of opportunity out there. So I guess that's a little bit of my story and where I'm at. I still feel like there is this tremendous need and that's unfulfilled. I never planned on being an advocate because I'm actually like a writer by trade. I'm an introvert. So I think this kind of brought this passion out with me, and I'd love to connect with other people who have a similar passion as well. But this was a very positive gathering because I do see an increase in the number of women from all different, like Desirée was saying, it's not just ethnicities, it's religion, it's sexuality, it's just of women coming to these conferences. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here, and my name is Desirée, and in my role, I lead Komen's Health Equity Initiative. And how I came here, like many on this stage, is a personal story. My sister, at 13, found a lump, and the tumor itself was benign. But it started a conversation, and as many of you know, a journey that impacts the way you get care and the decisions that you make, and even how you see yourself as a woman, even down to the way she picked her prom dress. And so on that journey as sisters, many of us, particularly in the Black community, and I think the biggest thing I want to say is there's so much often when you face it in your own community, you're like, well, in my community, there's so much stigma and shame. I think that's really, what the point of inclusion and diversity conversations bring, for us to say, yes, we need to have these groups where we have a circle to share our own stories and see people that look like us, but then also to say, wow, collectively, we are going through very similar experiences, and how can we leverage that community and go through that together? And so in my family, my mother was in healthcare, and so these were open conversations. Often she kept hers private through the years, but we certainly had this approach with my sister's care. And at 19, most of her reproductive system she lost through a very aggressive tumor. And so one of the things that I knew for sure is that growing up in Massachusetts, we had access to some of the best care. My mother understood this field, and when I came to Washington, D.C., which is where I live, I like to say it's my second favorite home, my sister had come there too, and my dad had lived in that neighborhood and community since we were 7. And we really noticed that often women that look just like us were having very different outcomes. And there's a map where you can literally look at the life expectancy between the metro line, the train in DC, and that Anacostia River that runs through the community. If you're on one side, you might live up to 17 years less than people that might be close to some of those best cancer centers of care. And so as I became a professional in the community helping women, one of the things, working with individuals just like Claudia with Nueva Vida, we saw often was, there was this investment from those cancer centers where the navigators were great, passionate young women, but didn't look like the population that we were serving. Or were really young women who were, trying to tell these older Black women or young women, oh, well, here's some tips. But that doesn't resonate from my experience. Or how do I talk to a provider when he doesn't understand where I'm coming from or all of the things that I'm juggling? And so we had an opportunity to write for a Komen grant to look at building a program that empowers women through patient navigation and train lay health workers and sisters that we call divas. And so we built a program called DC Pink Divas, where women come together, and just like Nueva Vida, side by side, they work with the Latino community in DC, and we work often with the Black community. And so through building this program and really getting Komen to look at what was happening in the African American community, but not just African American, certainly looking at LGBTQ and Latina as well, and individuals with disabilities, I was asked to come to Komen and really begin this work on a national level. And so each day I'm grateful because I think that, we certainly will go much farther if we're going together, and I think that's the point. And having the opportunity even to expand our relationship with organizations like YSC and working with Desirée as well. So that's a little bit about how I got here. I do want to add, it was very full circle last week. I was at a gala in DC. And I turned around, and the one thing that I thought was interesting was, even in Massachusetts, one of the centers of leading care for cancer in this country, the woman that cared for my sister was an African-American woman. And I have kept in touch with her for a number of years. She's a young doctor who's gone into pharmacy. And for my sister, she had a very short period of time, like many of us, or many of you as well, to make decisions about her fertility. At 19, 24 hours to make choices like that. And really had this team that understood the things that she was going through. And she had, sometimes the people in our lives are not the most supportive. And at the time, she had a man in her life who really wanted to know, in the hospital, what does this mean for her ability to have children? Right now, we want to make sure that she's going to make it through this, okay? And I think the interesting thing was that the doctor was so good at understanding the cultural aspects that we were going through, trying to make sure that she could make the choices at 19, but then think in the future and navigate all of that with such a respect and reverence. And at this gala, I turned around and she was sitting at the table behind me. And so last week, I got a chance to, I think, really have a full circle moment where it may be that we are looking at the institutions that are providing some of the best care, but I cannot stress enough what a difference it made that this doctor understood, this surgeon understood what it was like to be in my sister's shoes as a Black young woman and making those choices, because, fertility certainly is important in our community. So what can we do to make sure that every woman has those same opportunities, and it's not just a story that, is unique for my family? And so Komen, as many of you know, started as a promise between sisters that we now see as a promise to the community. And in my role at Komen, I lead a national health equity initiative where we did have a handout. It's in the back if you wanted to learn more about it. I'm going to focus more on some of the questions from the framework of the session on if you were diagnosed or how you're taking your cancer journey with disparities and as an African American woman. But how we started this work was really based on what Desirée shared. Oftentimes where you live does impact whether you're living. And we know that it's not just a zip code. It could be, unfortunately, who you love, what you look like, and where you're from. And we have to get past that in our healthcare system. And so some of those things are based on biology in the African American community. We know that women are diagnosed younger with more aggressive types of breast cancer, and often at later stages. And so some of that is behavioral as well. I like to say Black women don't have time for breast cancer because often we are putting everyone else before us, right? Making sure that mom's taken care of, our kids are taken care of, our husband's taken care of. All the trains are running on time. And when you make yourself the last on that list, maybe the year that you found the lump is not the same year that you go in. And when that happens, often you're diagnosed later. And the later, as many of us know, the outcomes are very different. And so we're really trying to make sure that we can understand the research with the biology so that we get women the treatment that is making a difference for what's happening biologically with African American women. But what can we also do systematically? How can we get women through outreach, reach them, I like to say, where they live, work, play, and pray in their own community, and then bring them through the healthcare system in a culturally competent, relevant way to meet them where they are. But you have to have a system that you can get through to do that as well. And so while we can empower a woman and give her resources and support, we also have to tackle the system. And so the Komen Initiative has 3 key areas that we are honored to have a unique relationship with. The Fund 2 Foundation funded us recently with a $27 million investment to look at the 10 cities where the disparities are the greatest between Black women and white women in the United States. And we are looking at late-stage diagnosis and mortality rates. And we created 10 communities that we're starting in. And in these communities, we are looking at 3 key areas. First, improving the quality health system, because not all mammograms are created equal, and not all healthcare is equal, and not all healthcare responds to the people we're trying to serve. So first, we need to look at the healthcare system and making sure that there is technology, there is quality standards, and centers of care that we can get to that are going to provide those quality services. And then second, we want to make sure that we can get to those quality services through patient navigation and access to screening, genetic testing, and clinical trials, which really are going to make a difference when you think about the types of barriers and the genetic indicators that we see in the African American community. And lastly is advocacy, because you can spend dollars at doing infrastructure, you can spend dollars at building navigation programs, but if you are not driving this as a legislative component within a federal mandate, I'm sure many of you have been watching what's happening with ACA, a lot of that erodes over time. So we have to hold our communities and leaders accountable, and we also have to be advocates and share our story. So the 4 key things I just want to share when we talk about how can you help reduce disparities, how can you work within your own community. I think the biggest thing is really be your own advocate. That's what my divas do, and I think that's why we're all here. How can we be our own advocate? The next thing is get a navigator. I think there's this whole conversation in the community where, you've got to have a big need to need a navigator, or have, this low income or a literacy issue. Having someone there to listen when maybe you're overwhelmed, having someone there to call the doctor and deal with some of those personalities we face in the healthcare system, having someone there to make sure that you can coordinate all of those care. Because when you get cancer, everything else doesn't stop. You still have to navigate all of these other things that you already are going through with your own health and your own family. And to Claudia's point, navigators help, whether that's helping you with your care or even providing you with additional resources. Studies have shown time and time again that with navigators, patients do better. And so that's one thing that, sometimes it's tough to ask for help. So maybe you don't see it as a navigator, you see it as a sister in the fight and someone that's going along with you. I also think another good thing about navigation is they are also, when you find a good one, able to talk and understand your family dynamics. You may have some things that are tough. You may be choosing to use your faith and treatment, and your family might not understand that. They want you to just pray about it. Well, I'm choosing to enroll in this trial because it's going to be prayer and using my good wisdom that God gave me to look at this from a different perspective. And sometimes those are tough conversations to have. There's a lot of isolation as well in the Black community about those choices, and navigators can help that. The other thing is looking at genetic counseling and genetic testing, because often if you are in the Black community and we know there's a biological component, there may be fear and stigma because of some of the historical aspects around the healthcare institution in the Black community, but we have to push past that, because how will you know for your daughters and their daughters or sons what the implications may be for your family if you're not looking into, well, is there a genetic component to this for me and my family, or is it not? And that also impacts your treatment and care plan. The next thing would be clinical trials. I know there's been some discussion here, but I can't stress it enough. 1% of Latino women make up clinical trials, 5% of Black women, and 83% of white women. The number one group in clinical trials are actually children. And if you think about it, it's because you do anything, right, to keep your child here. Again, we've got to do anything to keep ourselves looking at the best options available. So the number one reason why people are not in clinical trials, no matter what you look like, is because people don't ask. Your provider never asked you. So how do you get your provider to ask you? You might have to ask them. And you might have to ask more than once, because we know that sometimes when we're dealing with cancer, it's a long journey. And so you may be in a position where you have to go back and say, you said there was nothing, but is there something now? Have there been any new advances? Or are there opportunities for you to find those resources online? I've shared a couple of websites. Komen is working on a link between our hotline and clinical trials to make this easy, where you can call and literally get paired with one in your community to make that an easier conversation to have. But please ask often, because the healthcare profession, this is still something that they're learning to navigate. And then lastly, what we've learned across the country in conversations with leaders is ask about that conversation with family planning. I shared a bit about my sister and our family's journey with this. But I've just seen so many women where it moves so fast, and it wasn't a choice that they were able to consider in their care, and it's impacted their choices later in life. So again, be your own advocate and make sure that when you go in, if you can bring that navigator with you or your advocate and friend, it may help you navigate some of these tough questions, but there's certainly resources and support out there. So thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, ladies. As I mentioned, and some of you came in after the fact, if you have questions, if you can come forward and speak in the microphone, as this is being recorded, and we'd like to be able to have everyone here when they do the taping. So we're going to open this up for questions. All right, front row, come forward.
Hi, I have a question about just the differences in treatment and how we as a group can ensure that the disparities between different social and economic and different races as well, how we can advocate for others and ensure that those barriers are lessened and eliminated so that we're all treated the same.
Well, I think this is exactly how we do that, coming together. I think there's merit, as I said, to having those conversations in your own community, but I flew here from our advocacy summit, where we come together, all walks of life, to go to the Hill and share our own stories. So I think there's something to be said about where you work. Maybe you have an opportunity to influence the healthcare system. Maybe you have an opportunity to influence legislators. Or maybe you have the opportunity to come along and say, I may not look like this population, but this matters to my community, because here's the biggest thing. If any of you have heard of the National Minority Equality Forum, in many states, what used to be called a minority is now the majority. And so if you think about the impact on the healthcare system, this is something that I like to say, do it for the right reason or do it for the wrong reason. This is something that we need to address, because the system is creating costs that are astronomical that impacts us all. And for our sisterhood, there's certainly a benefit to coming together and sharing our stories collectively and saying, well, no, we really have to address this together.
I think it's also to connect with the community organizations and the healthcare providers within those communities, especially if you're able to, if you yourself are, like myself, I'm an Asian American. I do speak some of the language, to go to the local, let's say the Chinatown where they have the health clinics, and to talk with them and to have that information material that's bilingual or another language, and to say, hey, can I meet with you over a coffee and just share a little bit? I think it starts from a one-on-one, almost grassroots level sometimes. And also being in the media, and actually these days the media has kind of spread virally through social media and platforms, I think we all have the increasing ability to share that information through different social media platforms as well.
And I think another important way is to be a volunteer, because we need volunteers. Every single small organization works better with volunteers. And if you come and you ask, hey, because sometimes the organization doesn't go to you, but it's very important that every of us leave of our comfort zone and ask. And with simple things, for example, providing transportation from the house to the survivor to the hospital, if you don't speak, in my case, Spanish. Or for example, we have here Jessica. Jessica is a survivor, and she's volunteering in our support group in Gatesburg, Maryland, for having a Zumba class. And that kind of services is very important, because more that you do for our communities is a huge difference in our services.
Anyone else? So I'd like to just touch base on something that Amy brought up. YSC started something called the Council of Advisors that Amy spoke about, and there is one that focuses on diversity and inclusion. And to the comments that have been made here in terms of stepping up, and we heard over the weekend a lot of talk about advocate, being an advocate, letting your voice be heard. And so just would like to say that if you go on to the YSC's website, you can learn more about the Council of Advisors, what that involves, and the commitment. And I would just encourage, you to apply to potentially be a part of that. Because as has been stated, I think Jean Rizzo stated it, as well as Dr. Love, we need to step up. We have benefited from the work that has been done by many before us. And sadly, even if we did end breast cancer tomorrow, the majority of us have already been diagnosed, or we know someone that has, and then survivorship is real. And in order for you to be able to survive, you still need the supports. And so it'd really be great if we could come together and just try and share ideas. Make sure that the people in your community who have also been diagnosed and they're young, that they know about the services that are available not only within YSC, but I always like to say, unfortunately, once you're on the breast cancer journey, there's a whole lot that needs to be done. And there's not one organization that can do it all. And that's, why we have, Nueva Vida talking about what they do. We have Coleman talking about what they do. And, I just want to mention, interesting, in terms of Amy. Amy and I met, I think it's about 3 years ago. And she found me at one of the summits, and she says, oh, I've been diagnosed, I'm here, I'm young, and where are the Asian people? We really need to try and get more Asian people. And so perhaps, we can try and talk about this. And I have to say, that, Amy has been continually to come back, but she's also taken her show on the road, and she's done work with LBBC, and she's at other conferences, and I'm like, wow, she's really like taking off. But that's it. You find yourself having a passion to pay forward, to give back, and we're all busy. We're all busy. But we knew that when we heard those words, you have breast cancer, the brakes went on quickly. But we're here. And although some of us, are out of treatment, and some of us may be going through treatment, and some of us are living with the disease, you still have an opportunity to make an impact for someone else, because you know what it was like while you were going through. The goal, I think, for this organization is that, we're trying to do a lot and make a difference, but we're small, as Claudia said. And although we're going to be approaching our 20th anniversary next year, as it was mentioned, which is a wonderful thing, and we've come a long way, but we haven't reached the pinnacle at this point. And so we just really like to encourage everyone to say we each can make a difference, however small. And so it's important, that you constantly give us the feedback. We did a survey, about a year ago, just trying to get a sense of, what are the needs? Yes, I'm African American and I've been diagnosed twice with breast cancer, but I know what my journey is like, but I can't really say what this woman's journey was over there. And if she doesn't really share what her experiences are where she lives, because she's not my next door neighbor, then I don't know. And if I don't talk to Amy to find out about the differences in terms of the different Asian communities and what their needs are, then we're missing that window as well. And although, yes, we do want to focus on the LGBT community as well, we also want to focus on those that are disabled. And there's so many different aspects, as I said, of diversity that we'd like to be able to focus on. But I always like to say baby steps are still steps, and it's still an increment. And if we can get our constituents to join us, we can be that much greater, that much stronger, have a broader reach, and really, really make a difference in the lives of the young women that, are sadly being affected, because at the end of the day, young women are being diagnosed. It's a reality. We know it to be so, and we can't really bury our heads in the sand, but we really can try to come together. And so I don't know whether or not any of the ladies have any remarks that you would like to make in closing. Definitely, it was stated earlier, but in the back on the credenza, there are resources. Fortunately, it's not a book, so it's not going to weigh your luggage down, but it would encourage you to take some. But, for those of you that like to take the pictures on your smartphone, by all means, not mad if you do that as well. But take the information. Even if you don't need it at this point, you don't know who you're going to encounter that does. And I believe that each of us have the responsibility of teaching someone else and sharing on this particular journey. So I would ask them to give some remarks as we close at this time.
Thank you. I think Desiree highlighted one point that I really can't stress enough. I only know my experience. I know the Washington, D.C. community and where I'm from, but you know your community better. And as we continue to do our work, you have the resources. I did share some of our links. We are looking for advocates to continue to partner with us and share their stories, but we're also looking for feedback. So if there's a resource that you see that doesn't exist or doesn't ring true to you, this is a dialogue and a conversation. So definitely please continue to engage us, because we want to make sure that we are developing resources and an opportunity that speaks true to the community we look to serve. And sometimes those are tough and very real conversations, but we can't get there if we're not having that dialogue. So I would encourage you to continue this conversation beyond today, and to take those materials, and when you do find time, digest them and say, maybe this is something that I can share, but maybe there's a point that they could also improve. And I'd love that feedback, so thank you.
I think Desiree covered a lot of the highlights and the points, but I would like to focus on one, is that I do believe that that one person can make a difference, and it's stride by stride. Like it was 3 years ago when we met, and I was like, where are all the other Asians? I did say exactly that, and I am seeing a change over the past 3 years. I have seen a change, and I've also made a commitment myself to continue to go to the conferences and to make a connection. When I connect with somebody, we keep in touch, and they know of others, and I believe it starts from something small, and then it has the potential, once you kind of put down the roots, to grow into something larger.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to our voice be heard. And also, we create a list of different Latino organizations around U.S. in order that if you are, for example, in Florida, you can call them and ask what I can do for volunteer with you, and simple thing that you do makes a huge difference in every single of our clients. And that is all. Thank you.
Well, again, thank you.